Well, sometimes you got to screw up several times in a row in the exact same way to actually figure out how to do something right. So that happened to me again. I had OBS set improperly to the 640 by 480 mode to capture the video for these little Instagram things that I'm releasing, some of the outtakes from these sketches. And so I recorded about an hour and a half at 640 by 480 before with this set that I had pulled. It's one of the old 2016 generative sound design class sketches. And this one is kind of a beast. And so I guess, I'll just take some time to explain a little bit about how this thing is working and what exactly is the point to all this. And then we can spend some time adding to it, tweaking it a little bit, and just having some fun. So probably not going to spend an hour and a half on this one, as it can be pretty draining to do that much work and lose it all, really. But it happens more than you would know. So I made sure that this was set correctly. We're not on 640 by 480 mode this time. Okay, so to start, we have a few things set up. We've got this set to run when you hit keyboard key 1, and it plays this here. This is the only clip. This is sending one note. We have two notes. Let's fold that. We've got one at C8 and one at C2. And in order for this to work for you, you will have to get something like loopBE, internal MIDI, which routes MIDI around. You can send MIDI from Ableton to Resolume, for example. You could send MIDI from one program to the next, and you have to have it set up so that your output on loopBE is set to track, and the input is set to remote. So that's how that has to work. So we're sending notes out from this track here, and then we're going to remote control these. You can see we've got the mappings here. We're using channel 16 for whatever reason. It was 2016 when I made this, so I don't know if that has anything to do with why we chose channel 16. But so we've got different notes here that fire these off, and C8 is firing this off here. So that's all good and well. We've only got two notes here, and so we're using this random MIDI effect to split that up into multiple notes, and that's only working on this lower range here. So let's just see what happens when we hit the 1 key. Okay, so we can see that it played this section here, and it looks like it jumped and is just sticking on some of these clips. And these are actually still playing their automations inside here. And these, it's doing the follow actions on all of them. So let's hit 1 again. And now it chose this one. Let's hit 1 again. Not really hearing much. We'd always just manually click this to play that. And actually we're getting a different sequence of notes here. You can sort of hear something. So it's a little more quiet on this one. Cool, and let's hit 1 again. This is gonna randomly pick a section. And so there's, as you can hear, a difference between each of these sections. So I'm just kind of spamming the 1 key. Why on earth would we want to have a setup like this? It seems like kind of crazy, and this, mind you, is extra crazy looking because we have each one of these is where we have like a follow action sequence playing different notes with each clip, and different timings for each of these clips. So obviously this is a little unique. Well, it's all unique, but we would have a setup like this for several reasons. The first case scenario is that you would be playing a live set where you would want to have it start kind of randomly, so that let's say you're on tour, you're playing a bunch of shows, you don't want it to play the same sequence every single time. And there's a Max for Live patch, not in this particular Ableton set, but one that I created and will probably include in a future one, where it plays a random notes in a series. So in this MIDI effect here, the Max for Live effects will choose, it will create a random order of numbers that you give it. Say in this case we would give it 4, and every time we hit the 1 key it would go from 1 to the next. It would not repeat any numbers twice. So using a tool like that with a setup like this and a live set, you're always going to play all the songs but in a different order each time, kind of randomly. And so that is an interesting way of doing it, and that was a way I was doing live sets for a little while there. Also, if you are setting up your music to be generative, for example, in the case that you wanted to have, let's say, a release that someone would pay for and get a unique version of the song, so everybody would have their own unique versions. And this is something that I did probably back in 2010 or 11, I forget, it was a while ago. And that's where this idea originated. I had a release called Iterate, and it was on a little, the mini CDRs, 20 minutes, and each song was set up this way. There were 4 songs on each CD, and I had to hand render each one of those songs out. So 4 times 50, we had about 50 sales. So that was an interesting, fun idea, and each song would have a lot of variation. So just for example, we've got this old tape effect in this Effects Lane 3, and I believe right now we have our noisemaker, and this is all of our instruments in it. Let me move this, scoot this out of the way. And so this is running into Effects 1. We have a series here that, depending on which clips are on here, we're going to have different things turned on there, and so on through here, and then through here, and then out, finally out. Yes, and here's all our notes, and these are also running through, you can take a look at the routings. We've got these notes all running into MIDI Effects 1, and then MIDI Effects 1 has this group that is sometimes turned on and sometimes turned off depending on which clips it plays. And we have this start clip, which has a follow action set to a very short time span, and it's set to play anything other than itself, and it'll jump to any one of these, which each one of these has a different set of parameters inside of this. Or I think one of them, this is even not on. So we can actually fire these off and see. So as we hit start, it's going to jump to a random one other than itself each time. Same with this. And now we have the notes from this turquoise section actually firing off the noisemaker from this section. So you can really vary it. You can actually have different parts from different sections, if you will, and like Frankenstein it together. We actually created this in the last sketch that got botched. We could, well, we have this key section here, and this essentially, using the MIDI note C8 that comes out of this initial control, it chooses this here. As we MIDI map there, we see C8 plays the start, and it has a really quick timeline, and then it will jump to a random key. So all these MIDI notes are then filtered through from MIDI effects into key, and some of these keys have some modulation inside. And you can see we're automating the pitch. So we're vacillating here between 4 notes up and our root note, which is C3, I think, for the most part in this case. So we can not only change the global pitch, we can change all kinds of MIDI effects in here. And then eventually these MIDI notes make it to our instrument section. So let's try chord here. So really for the green section, this is how it's supposed to be. And we'll just choose the key of C here. So every time, again, we hit the 1 key, we've got the MIDI routings set up so that it will choose a different section. And each section that it chooses, depending on the follow actions set up for each track here, we get a different set of variations. So you could have a drastically different sounding song, if you will, for each of these sections. It all depends on how far you want to take it, how far you want to program it. It does take a lot of patience. It took me several years to actually kind of come up with some of these ideas because I wasn't super interested in it right off the bat. I just was dabbling every now and then. So everyone's going to have a different pace at which they're going to discover this kind of stuff and be able to figure it out. Well, I'm essentially gifting this set of concepts to you, this framework, if you will. Obviously, it's up to you to switch out the various instruments in here and make them do what you want. So in each clip you have here can have a different sound. You know, you could even, so hold on, let's just, for example, we've got the purple section I've got it labeled song 1, right? And inside of song 1 we have a group, another subgroup, an instrument rack that has multiple different instruments. We've got some operators in there. We have a tension instrument. And when I hit this start, it just happened to land on this multi one, which is, it's got a modulation on this chain selector knob, which I've mapped to here. I mapped this knob to there. And so we have a modulation just switching between the different instruments. Now, if I click instrument 1, you can see it's going to this instrument. If I click the instrument 2 clip, it's choosing the middle one. And inside of each of these clips, we can automate various parameters of each instrument. And if we wanted to get extra insane, we could also group this and have a third layer down grouped instrument. But to keep things simple, I'm going to go ahead and ungroup that, and we will just leave this as is. Instrument 3 is set up to control this one. It's a beautiful function here to be able to have not only multiple instruments and chains, but be able to scan through them using a knob. I think if I set this up better, instrument 1 clip would be playing this one. Contextually, it makes sense to go down the line, but for some reason, I set this up a little backwards. You can set it up however you want. Nobody really cares. As long as you're comfortable with it. So when I click on this, we get instrument 1 here. So this one is set up contextually proper, if you ask me. Instrument 2, it plays this. So perhaps to get a more dramatic sound, we can -24 this one. So instrument 1 is a very deep, almost textural sound. And so you can see there's just a lot of ability to have a lot of variations in there. In our effects section here, we have this start. We've got a dry where most all of these are turned off. We have an effects 3, which only certain things are used. You can see this says effects 3, and so it's being automated where everything else is turned off. Effects 2. When this clip is fired, the effects 2 rack, which has, it looks like a corpus, a grain delay, and we've got some automations inside of that. And then effects 1. And then this one isn't even on at all because I believe, if I remember from the last attempt at doing a sketch for this that failed, under this green section we have it controlling Yeah, this one turns on just for the green section. And we could name this, you know, so that it would be easier. We could also have a, you know, section of groups. We could have, we could just, you know, select a bunch of these and just group it, and that could be, you know, only for this section is that group used. I do really love this tension sound in here. It sounds just like my guitar sometimes if I take like a little dulcimer hammer and tap against the strings. It's amazing how good of a job they did with that. But for this we have various, you know, we're not using all these different notes here. We're just using this MIDI track here with some, you know, this random turns on, I believe it turns on this instrument here, and chord turns this on and this off. One interesting thing to note that I found in the last attempt at this sketch is that when you have a series of clips, you can automate a knob or button inside that clip. And then if you click on another clip, it goes back to the default state. So like, for example, we left the default state of this as on, and then I automated it only in this clip to be off. And then I also found out that if we hit stop and don't fire off another clip, just stop, it leaves the state of that effect, or it could have been a rack, or it could have been anything. It leaves it as what it were left off as at the last clip. So if we turn on this clip, it'll go back to its default state. So that's an interesting behavior pattern that could be possibly exploited to do some interesting things down the road. And I'm still wrapping my mind around exactly like what the nuances of ideas could be to come out of that. So okay, cool, all good and well. We've got all this, we've got this framework. So maybe we'll go ahead and set up our new section. Whoops, I don't want to do that. I just want to add in some scenes here. And we need a note. And let's create an empty clip here, because that way we'll at least get the default of whatever this is, and maybe that's on, and maybe we don't want that on, but we'll find out later. Key we'll keep blank because we only want it to pick from one of our keys here. And we could go ahead and fill it out with all 12 keys and then a bunch of, you know, extra weird ones here. But we'll do that later. And then we need at least one clip here. And yeah, we're going to want to have some clips, you know, to control our effects also. So I'm going to go ahead and make kind of a template start clip. We're going to have this play anything other than itself. I'm going to go ahead and make that blank. And I'm not going to have any follow actions on this one. I'm going to go ahead and make the length of this like 6. Let's just say 6 for now. And I think that should do it. Let's have 3 just for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and, since we've got this all set up, duplicate this over. Cool. So for now, I just want this one note. I'm going to actually, like you've seen me do in some of the other sketches, I'm going to just have one note play here. And we also want to set this up like we've done the others. And you know, we could name this just song whatevs. And then let's make it 134 BPM. Actually 114. Cool. And what we need to do is we need to map it to a key like we have the others. So D#2 is the that is the the last key used. So let's turn on this dummy clip and D sharp. So we're talking way down here. Okay, so this is the note we want to map here. So I'm gonna hit play on that, and as you can see, we're sending out through the loopBE internal. And let's go ahead and click on that. So we've got that selected and turn that on. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's mute this so it keeps wanting to jump down and I can't go back up to turn this dummy clip off. Cool. And all we need to do to get the random thing to work is just add one more choice here. So now let's give it a shot. Okay, that's unmuted. I'll just hit 1. See if it'll select that section. Looks like it did. Cool. Sometimes with the random, you get the same note going through, you know, several times in a row, and that can be obnoxious. That's where that Max for Live note generator is very useful. I think that this is a live set that I'm going to want to come back to and just keep adding to it. But for now, let's focus on this section and this section only. I thought it would be interesting to have a multi-part sketch, you know, where it spans over 5 videos, where we just, you know, focus on building up a huge Uber template like this to create ourselves a nice generative song creator, if you will. You know, we could make it so that this is a techno piece, and using the same instruments, we could use automations and things to make this sound more breakbeat-ish. You know, we could have this one more ambient. We could have this one, you know, whatever we want it to be, more abstract beats. This one could be complete drone. However we want to set it up, it just takes a little time to get everything set up. So for this one, I wanted to play with some beats. Right now you can hear that it is very tonal. Right now it is firing off this one. Now let's, I just want to make sure. Okay, so the purple one is also choosing this one. The blue one is choosing that one. So if the purple is choosing this all the way up, so maybe what we'll do then, we'll then just move this up here. I'm gonna insert, how about instead of an instrument rack, we go with a drum rack. And then I'm gonna pull this down here just by 1. And then, first of all, I'm gonna get rid of, let's move that away. And then I will have this modulate this button here that's gonna select our instrument. Let's see if we got it on the right one. Looks like it went too far. So we have to go up a little further than that. Could probably just dial it in using the edit. So it looks like, okay, there it selected the right one. It's a very nuanced selection there. But you can see our drum rack, we're getting a lot of random instruments playing at various spots. We're gonna wanna use some MIDI effects to hone that. And let's hone it up to, let's start at C3. I think that seems like a really good average starting point. So first of all, I'm gonna copy this modulation and move it into this clip. And let's just get everything going, set up in there. Cool. So right now we only need one of these, and I need to figure out here, well, let's get one sound in there at least. So I did some work before this sketch and got a few of the racks more organized, even some presets in there. I've got this kick preset, which might be a good starting point. So we have to figure out what is happening here. It looks like we've got this MIDI effects occurring, and we want to go ahead and shut this off. So as long as this clip is playing, it will take this automation in there. Now let's see if we get a difference. It looks like it's playing these notes kind of consistently. We don't have any effects happening here. So this one is going into here, and then so we're getting different keys, which to remedy that, all we need to do is create a filter right before this drum rack. And I don't want to say it's a filter. It's more like you could say it's a note compressor. We'll push whatever notes are coming in all the way up. And you can see here that all the notes are going all the way to the top. So no matter what notes we play in there, it's just going to push them all the way. A plus 128 is pretty far up. And so now we're going to pull down until that one note hits C3. Almost there. Let's just arrow key that down. Cool. So and I am noticing multiple notes playing, and I think that's also because we still have those these are also sending notes through. So again, you can have sections of each song cross affecting each other, which is really fascinating and really complicated to think about. But if you like a good puzzle, there you have it. Okay, so for now, we just have this one note, very steady note. And this doesn't sound much like a kick for that matter. Let's pitch it down, and we'll put this pitch effect right before the operator. Cool. And it's a very long held note. So what I want to do is put an arpeggiator right here before the drum rack. And let's well, or we could also put the arpeggiator right before this. Let's just call this techno basic for now. And kick. Very cool. So I want to try to get that clap preset in there, our lo-fi clap. And we need to also, so right now we need notes sending to both. One way that comes to my mind, and I know this seems a little weird, but we could use this chord, so it's also going to send through both. You know, this clap sounds nuts when it's just you held it down. And if we pull this all the way down and take our gate down, maybe we'll take our gate down here. All right, now let's pull in this pitch here and see what. Clap doesn't really respond to the pitch. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we can try the pitch here. Or the transpose. There it is, crunchy. we could also play with some audio effects after that. But for now, I'm going to move on and put a operator in here, hi-hat, and we can do the same thing again that we did with this clap. I think we could, I don't think we can rename these. Oh well. So we'll just take this one note that's coming in here. We had it tuned with this down to C3. So this is also pushing at a C sharp 3, aiding the clap. And if we do up 2, yeah, now we'll get this. But we only want and it sounds like we're getting some effects here, which is where I'm hearing the kind of echo sound. So I can remove all of these for now, and we'll just focus on these to get our initial settings. And we have to remember that if we move any of the knobs in here, it will affect the default for all these others. So if we want to set it a certain way just for this section, we really need to automate it with one of these clips for this section playing. So it records those positions only for this section and doesn't affect the others. That is something that I've messed up on a lot in the past, and I have to remind myself a lot to remember to do. So right now, this is only responding to the single first note because this is set to what, 1 bar. You know, we could also make this really, we could do that, or we could add that arpeggiator. Like so. I'm curious what the swing sounds like. And we can automate this for this particular clip. So let's go ahead and do that. In fact, we can have it sort of jumping. We can have sort of an odd swing groove happening, which is really cool. I really like these off time. And let's make sure we've got this set to volume, velocity. Yep, okay. And we can modulate or automate if we want, it doesn't matter. In fact, I think for this, we want every other one to be sort of quiet. So let's try. There we go. Now, what if we want this kick to kind of have a bit of a, yeah, in this case, you know, unfortunately, modulation with some of these knobs only works vertically or off of it, so we have to automate if we want. And this will give us some of that sweet little variation every now and then. And if we hold down Alt and pull this so that it's off the grid, it's gonna do strange, even more strange things. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that. So hopefully this is all making sense in terms of taking one note and pushing it all the way up and then tuning it down so we can take that note to make a beat, because we don't really need to tune this. I mean, if we did, we'd have to figure out another way around. And there are so many ways to deal with MIDI notes in that respect. But for now, we're just keeping it simple. So there's a lot of different variations we could do here. What if we go ahead and try a different beat? Let's just say, we'll just call this off beat. You know, it's tricky when you're sculpting rhythms with the arpeggiator using automations. Let's go ahead and I want these to fire off to the bar. I think we could keep this set as none. Well, let's see. Yeah, and we could set it up in here to be instead of global, which follows this, we could set these to be 1 bar, which is useful. Sometimes you need the global to be different than and have the clips be their own thing. Okay, so we wanted to switch this beat up. So let's see, let's focus on the kick. And definitely the best way I can think of in this context to get notes to kind of not happen really when we don't want them to is to make a gate effect, like you've seen me do many times. Let's call this note gate. So we can modulate this off any which way how. Cool. And so it's only modulating this way in this clip when we, yeah. And we could also change up how this kick behaves by adding some automation in there. So for example, let's play with this. Yeah, let's add some modulation in here that causes the transpose to bend up and down. But you have to be careful now when you move stuff around. It will change the default for all the other clips. So it's good to remember where you started from. You can always hit the undo button. So I think it was set to 1, and we'll go ahead and I wish that modulating the rate would let you, I wish it was bipolar, I guess is the term for that. So anyway, we can automate it and bypass that, because at least automating will let us go down. So it's a lot more scattery. And let's make this one and I really want to transform the sounds a bit so that we get a much different sound per clip. I really, really wish that Ableton would let us change the presets of instruments per clip, like using this program change. My God, would that be so useful? I wanted something like that so much, but instead we have to kind of control a lot of things this way. I think the other easier way is we could group this, you know, and in fact I think I'm going to go ahead and do that instead of trying to automate all these knobs to be a certain way for each clip. Let's get this back to default. Okay, so there's our default hi-hat. So we've got this, we'll just call this hi-hats, and hat 1, hat 2. Okay. And we'll probably want more than that. You know, I would say we could have a different hi-hat for each clip. So we will open up our chain section. I'm just going to move this one over here 1 and map this. Cool. And so when this is playing, okay, so let's go ahead and go back to Techno Basic. We want this to play the very first chain, hat 1. So I'm going to turn on offbeat, and now we need to modulate it so that it's only playing this second chain. And let me make this second chain very, I'm going to use, how about a saw? Just so that we really know, because look, it jumped one ahead. It's really finicky, so we have to hold down shift. Cool, now I'm hearing it, and we see the bar is correctly on the spot. So here we can have all of our different settings. You know, it takes a bit more of your RAM to have a ton of different operators or whatever loaded in like this. But hey, I mean, if you know you got 8 gigs of RAM, you shouldn't have any problems. Luckily, all the built-in Ableton effects and instruments don't take up a ton of RAM. It's really the GUI heavy VST plugins that tend to suck a lot of your RAM up. Like those Arturia effects and instruments, they sound amazing, but man, they're heavy hitters when it comes to RAM. D16s also use a lot of RAM. But as you've heard with all these sketches, you know, it's possible to get a lot of mileage out of just the Ableton instruments and effects. Okay, cool. So let's set up this, and maybe instead of a clap on the second one, we'll make a snare type sound. So go ahead and map this. And you know what? I believe we can copy the modulation from this previous hi-hat one here. We just copy that. And then use the same, it'll paste the exact same number or whatever spot here. So we don't have to just like dial it. I guess we could have used the edit value option when you right click on an automation dot. And then for this one, I think we can just click on this clip and it points us in the right direction. So, okay, cool. And let's just make sure, well, actually, let me switch up this. We'll do our really easy 606 type snare sound. Got ourselves a little tone. I don't think we need all of these. And let's get ourselves a white noise. And for now, we'll leave the filter as it is. So it sounds like, yeah, okay. Sounds like we got loop set on. Let's do none. Yeah, because the loop does give us a kind of crackly, good for hi-hats. Cool. So real quick, I want to sort of turn off a few of these effects. And I believe this is the one I'm looking at here. I'm going to shut this one off just in this clip. Cool. So we're mostly getting dry right here. And all these effects are by default set to off. This one looks like it's still on, so we will go ahead and automate the off on that. Cool. So this is dry everything. Now this is all set up in one group, and that's all good and well. But as you can see, getting some of these to behave properly, making sure that the defaults are all working right between the different sections can be a bit squirrely. We could obviously have multiple groups here, and each one of these color sections would be inside of a group, and they would have their own sets of effects and things like that. Now, sharing out effects racks like this between different sections has its own benefits. The drawback being the somewhat complicated and potentially buggy things that can occur, you know, if you're not careful between the different sections. So if you figure out how to set everything up just right, you don't run into a lot of those issues. So there's our techno. It sounds like our hi-hat, or I want to say our clap snare thing we need a gate here like we have with the kick. So let's copy that over. And let's modulate that so that we only have these firing off. Cool, but I don't want them firing off right at the beginning, maybe. Almost like a you know, drum and bass. Not fast enough, but okay, let's play with our kick. What happens when we turn this off? And I think it might be easier if we automate this so that it's only working like the quarter notes. And actually 16ths, I'm looking at 16th notes because then we'll have more to play with. And I think we had the and we can just mess with this gator effect until we get something that we like. And we could also play with this velocity here, so that when we have this set lower, we get quieter notes. I think that's how this should work. If it's below 50, we're turning our speaker off. So what if I try to remove this speaker, or I could make this speaker here. Maybe I'll just do 1 and 0. 1 and 0. Let's see if we get the right behavior with that. So when it's set to 0, we get no notes. Yeah. And it doesn't look like we're getting much of the velocity coming through that I was hoping. So because this isn't even affecting, I think we need maybe this chain here. And let's create, I'm doing some craziness right now. This is how it goes. You know, you think of an idea and try to think of all the angles and all the stuff that you can do. And I know this is possible. So where we turn this down, we can get less of a velocity. So we'll make the velocity in here make the velocity in this chain much lower, and we'll have these two fade and see if that does anything. It sounds like it just killed. Bit of a tangent, but let's open this up and look at the velocity here and see where we're. Yeah, it looks like it's just playing at 1 for some reason, which is interesting. And it seems like when I put this in, that's when that happens. And maybe that's because this has not been mapped. Cool. Now let's try to turn this down to 1. And let's play with some lower velocities. Yay, it worked. Okay, so that was not too difficult. Low velocity, and we'll call this velocity. Jesus, what to call it? We don't get much. 0 equals off. Note gate plus velocity. Velocity, yay. Velocity 0 equals off. Hopefully this will all make sense later on. But what I need to do now is make sure we save this to a rack. And I'm kicking myself in the foot so much for forgetting to do this. Often I build things and then they get lost in the shuffle. So we don't need this. This is cool. So that's very useful to have that that gate there. Now let's hear what happens when we. Cool. Cool. We can hear the velocity at work. And we could unlink this if we wanted every other to be a little quieter. At least that has a bit of variation in there. Looks like we've also got some effects inside of here we can play with that are turned off. I think these are used in some of the other pieces, programs, if you will. Cool, and I can modulate this to only turn up every now and then, so it needs to play out for 17 measures before it actually starts to fade into that kind of like sucking effect. And we could set this so that the loop starts here. And as long as this isn't set to legato, it will always start from here at the beginning. Cool, so there's a techno program that we've got there. Now let's check out our offbeat. So it takes a bit of forethought, but you can certainly build these sections up to do a lot of different stuff. It's just a matter of like remembering how you set it all up. So we have this one kick here, and I wanted to set this up to do what we have with our hi-hats and claps, where we have multiple different kicks. And kick 1, this is where you get the most variety. And in this kind of context of making songs where you've got one clip that's controlling a lot of different timbres. And let's map this to here, pull this all the way up. Now let's go to our hi-hat where we have the same setup. Show modulation, let's copy that like we did before. Go back to our kick. And paste that in there. Okay, so for this kick I wanted it to be a lot more powerful. So maybe more of a tail. Very cool. Let me just double check on the levels here, make sure I'm not blowing anybody's eardrums out. Awesome, wow, and we're already at almost an hour, And you can just see how long, you know, you can really spend a lot of time building out these monster racks. But as you can see, you could have up to 128 different kicks, or different, you could have kicks in this section, you could have hi-hats in this section, and just use modulation to select between them. So that's another way you can have just one instrument rack cover a lot of sonic ground. Of course, you could use samples in here instead of operator. It doesn't have to be all DSP. As much as I'm avoiding DSP just for the sake of, so you can open these up and hear stuff, and I don't have to have a project folder with a million samples. It's like a gigs and gigs by all said and done. You can, yeah, use samples do sound better in a lot of cases. You can get way more variation, I think, out of DSP-based instruments like operator, but sounds like we lost our kick on this one. So I believe we hadn't set this clip up to select down to the proper kick. And, you know, we could have this, we could have this select between the two. Right now, I think it's selecting the second kick. We could have it going between. So now it's kind of jumping between the two kicks, which is nice. Yeah, so you can have like a lot of timbres sort of firing off at once. Let's make a third kick. Kicks are some of the easiest, I think, things to make, and we'll pull this one up. Now you can hear our reverb effect kind of coming in. And let's pitch this way up so we can hear it in a very obvious fashion. And I'm going to have this one sort of, let's just call this beat 3. We'll have this one choose the third kick. So you can really spend a lot of time on one clip just shaping one sequence. But we essentially have different clips acting as different, you know, songs. If we had different melody sections, each as their own clip, you know, that could also be really interesting. I'm almost tempted to try and tackle that one as well, to where we would have a melody section inside of here. So that's, yeah, that you can really get so deep, so amazingly crazy. It almost barks, this one. Let's add a little hi-hat. And let's play with the envelope for that a little bit. Let's see if we get a frequency velocity. We'll just envelope. There it is. Get our like laser beam sound going. And what happens if we loop that? We get a lot of like almost bubbles sounding. Yeah, so now this kick is almost turning into a bass line in a way. I think the goal is to get the operator set up just as much as you know, as good as you can get it without automating anything, and then use that as your starting point and just start automating it however you want in all of the clips that you're using it. Kicks. So these are obviously very generic sounding drums, but just for the sake of this kicks, man, some crazy business. Now we want to play with this clap snare thing. We could have this beat jumping between our two snare and clap sounds. Now you can see it jumping here. And we could also automate this clap to do some show automation. There we go. There. And whoops, I did not want to change the default there because that would change it on all the other clips. Yeah, I'm just doing the madman modulation drawing thing. And if we want, we can add in any kind of effects. And as long as we turn this off and then automate it to only be on in this clip, then it won't affect any of the other clips. So we could just do the real ricochet kind of. And maybe we'll just have this automate down. I don't really think that this is doing much in terms of the sound we're getting out of all this. Again, instead of automating, we could just make a whole new chain and duplicate operator to be able to have a different sound altogether. Yeah, we can hear this thing in effect anyways. Yeah, and maybe let's automate this to do getting a lot more action there. This is with no gate. Part of me wants to replace this with my velocity gate stuff, but then we'll lose any of the automations from the previous clips if we slap this out. We could have both going on, of course. We could really just litter all kinds of MIDI effects in there. And I do want to automate the attack of this one. Oh, I'm automating the attack of the wrong thing. I wanted to automate the attack of this, the operator, this was supposed to be our snare. I see what's going on now. I'm actually working on possibly the whole wrong section. Wow. Yeah, it's been one of those days. But, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Cool, now we can hear this doing something there. Yeah, it wasn't even on the hi-hats. That is funny. Wouldn't be the first time this happened. So it should, since I did everything with care, this clip sounds the same as before. Yep, we got our techno thing. And starting to get, you know, quite a different sound coming out of here. We could try one more where we just do some abstract type of stuff. And we could maybe make it just stay on this third kick. So not for the faint of heart. This type of setup is intense for sure. So now it's jumping between this and nothing, so that's interesting. Probably not what we want, so we can pull this back down to, yeah. There, now it's just stable, and then we can automate this to have some tighter notes in there. And then let's play with this. Some more fade ins and outs. And this is a bit loopy here since we set this to 1. So let's just go off the grid there and maybe duplicate some of this. And have some of these to be slower. And this can be, just turn that off for now. And then let's pull this out. And we could also automate this one if we felt like it, which we shall. It's basically taking this kick and just doing really absurd things to it. Now, let's turn on some effects for this particular layer. So when we hit beat 3, this should turn off because that was the default state that it was in. Maybe we want some saturation just for beat 3, I don't know. Sounds like Techno Basic probably needs that, or at least it needs a drum bus. So let's have the default off and really push the drum bus up. Put this before the limiter. I wish you could automate the order that these are all in, but unfortunately not. So let's give Techno 1 a little bit of the grain delay as well. But we'll automate the, yeah, I like our fun little reverb thing coming through there. Yeah, it needs a little tempering in terms of our gator system, but whatever. It's still generative, and that's partly why it's kind of doing its own thing. So yeah, maybe we'll turn this on for the abstract one, but we'll pull the drive way down for it. Just better behaved, and maybe we'll also still maybe too much of this drive, still maybe too much crunch perhaps. Maybe only crunch every now and then. I feel like the hi-hat needs to be also a lot more insane. Do we have a gate for the hi-hat as well? I don't know if we ever got that far with the hi-hat. So we can just and play with the automation some. Quite a difference now as we're automating certain things. judiciously. Quite a difference between these sections. Let's definitely turn the saturator on for this one. The only time it's really difficult is when you start moving around the knobs and changing the defaults of things. Then as long as you remember to not do that. We could also have various sections like FX1, and then we could duplicate it, just have different, these only turning on when different clips are playing. So that's one way to do it. It's a little bit easier. It keeps everything sort of in their own little box. So we haven't even gotten to automating some different types of effect setups. Let's hear what this sounds like when it's turned on. Looks like we've got it's automated off for now. And then maybe we'll make this clip, this thing turned off. But in this clip, this will be turned on, this Satron effects or whatever. We could do things like where we just have the effects sort of fading in and out, not just like constantly on. Cool. And then this clip could have both this on. It could only be on in sections, if that sounds okay. I don't even know what that'll do. And we could have maybe this effect will give it more. Yeah, full on. So the tricky thing is when we hit play here, we're going to get a random effect and a random beat. It's going to be different every time. If we wanted it to be the same beat, we could figure out different ways of making it. Using this randomizer, we could split up another note to select which one of these specifically. That's a whole other tricky set of logic there, but again, and that's where we would maybe want to split these out into various groups instead of trying to do it all in here. I like it compartmentalized myself, but that's just my own personal challenge and interest and opinion, I guess, of way of doing things. So we call this one dry. And let's give ourselves another one here. And we'll turn this off altogether. And we'll just only play with this whatever Alt-X thing, or sounds like a sort of resonator. Let's set it up like this so that it fades in and then just loops at this on state, and then it has a few sort of fade ins and outs throughout its on loop. I'm kind of curious what's going on in here. Doesn't sound like we're even using this corpus, so I'll just pull this up a little bit. Probably need to turn this one down for this particular effect here. What happens if we run our beat through it? It's like a whole different kind of vibe. And if we run it through that, I think this one had to fade in a little bit. And then this one. Maybe when I deleted this, it actually removed it. I might have hit remove mapping to change. I'm not sure what I did, but I think I killed some of the automations that I. Okay, so this one is kind of working. Yeah, it's tricky. There's a lot of ways to screw things up. Obviously, as you're noticing me screwing a lot of things up. So let's turn on this effects here. And then I want to have this one sort of just fade in. So if I delete it here, it should only delete it in this clip, but let's see if it deletes it here also. Ooh, that's dangerous. That is dangerous. I wonder if it also deletes it for all the clips. I'm assuming it will. And that just does not sound like a thing we want. So we'll have to be very careful with that. I feel like it didn't used to do that, but I could be wrong. It could be... So it means that you have to go into the clip and remove the automation instead of choosing the delete automation option here. Which, just something to remember, because otherwise, wow, yeah, no, that would be annoying, just losing it all the settings for all these sections. Again, another reason to probably split this out into multiple groups, so you're not relying on so many clips and settings having to be have between all these different sections. So if I, you know, I feel like it should only just delete it for the clip that it's playing in, but whatever. The heck? So stupid. So if I delete automation there, do we also delete it here? Ooh, yes, we do. Gosh, okay. Note to self, don't choose delete automation ever, because gosh, that's just going to ruin it. It's going to ruin a lot. I probably did just ruin some things. I probably had that effect turned on. Man, yeesh. And I guess I could hit undo a bunch, but for now I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole. I'm just gonna, and we'll make this one just a little on. Sounds like it's sending a beat through a pipe of some kind. For this, I want to play with this. Let's turn on this here and then just sort of get some automation going on here. We've got a tape chew sound. It's a really chintzy version of the real deal, but you know, I have not yet found one plugin that actually does a tape chew really well compared to the real thing. Cool. And this one we'll set it up to be a little more, I want to choose delete automation, but only on this clip, and it's going to kill it for all of those. Maybe there's a way around that. I don't know. Yeah, so if I kill it here, delete automation, are we going to delete it here? Ouch, yes. Okay, so let's undo that. Gosh, note to self, maybe have a clip that is just blank that you can always use as the start. Maybe this start clip really is probably the way to go. Of course, it has follow action stuff set up in it, but wow, okay. Yeah, do not choose delete automation or it will ruin it for everything in every clip. I cannot believe it does that for all, it kills all the clips automation. It should only kill the automation. Well, I guess it's just the entire knob, really. Yeah. Maybe there's a way around. I mean, you could obviously drill down in there and just select all and delete it. And there's probably, I could make a keyboard shortcut hotkey to do that. Oh, did I just choose delete automation? Yes. Hey, not good. See, sometimes I gotta screw it up several times before finally getting it. That has been my personal lesson for the day. There, let's have this sound like it's kind of an old, bungled tape sound. That's also why I like modulation too, because, well, you know, it's harder to screw up that whole thing, whereas delete modulation is tricky in this case, but you know, definitely learning. So, of course, we duplicate this. Now we're going to have the modulation carry over. I should just have a dry, like a plain dry one, you know, and we could just use that one as our starting point. Cool. We'll do that. And then this one we'll make crazy. And then turn this thing on. I'm just gonna move everything around a little bit. Does sound pretty weird with this old tape effect on. I'm gonna leave the hiss off for now. Actually, you know what? Screw it. No, I'm not. I'm gonna get some hiss in there. Cool. And I think I want to change the defaults of these. Let's click on dry. Yeah, we want the default of this to be off. All right, cool. So we got to remember, if there's no clips playing, whatever settings we move these knobs to, that becomes the default. So that when any automation takes it over, if we go back to another clip playing, it jumps down to the default. I think the only time it does not jump down to the default is if we hit stop. Yeah, and it doesn't have another clip to play, so we need kind of a dry clip to basically revert to our default settings. Wow, okay, so that sounds pretty fascinating. So this is our dry setup. Yeah, let's go ahead and duplicate these down. So now when we hit start, you know, here we're just going to get a bunch of random selections of these. So that's 4 to the 4th power. That's a lot of potential variations. For generative, this is the way to go. Let's hear our abstract of this crazy. FX3. FX2. FX1. Cool. So for FX1, I think I'm going to turn on the chonker. Don't know what that does, but it's kind of distortion-y effect. So we'll just fade it around. And let's pull this off the grid a bit, the normal grid. FX2, we're going to have some reverb in there. And on top of that, we're going to use this Corpus FX3. We'll have this one. Maybe too much tone there, but you know, for the sake of what we're doing here, I think it's fine. For FX3, we'll turn on some of this Corpus FX2. Maybe we'll go back to FX2 and temper the side of here. Looks like I think we want to pull down this tune something. Maybe we could have it sort of fading up and down. Well, an hour and 20, close to about what the last session that I did with this set was. But we definitely, at least were able to take it a lot further. I could at least demonstrate this time around this crazy concept, this crazy framework, if you will, and some of these techniques of using a start clip to jump to and stick on a clip below it that has a different array of settings. So this one sounds a bit too dry. Well, actually, no, we have this effect working. Maybe we want to turn on this for number 3 and pull down our wet dry a little bit. Normally I like to have my own rack wet and dry with grain delay, but for the sake of time, and I'm certainly running out of energy. Okay, so the real power here occurs with when we hit this and we get our different combinations here. And it's a little different every time. Obviously, the more clips we add down here, the, I guess, extremely rare that we'll ever get a repetition. So yeah, there's just a lot of variation, and that's one section. So if we hit our 1 key, that's going to fire off this. Here's song 1, if you will. Song 2. Song 3. Well, technically 1, 2, 3, 4, song 5. And within song 5, we have all these different beat sequence programs. One thing we could do, and let me save it before I do something crazy like this, we could set this thing up so that it's always going to play this beat section, but it will also, we'll have a separate group that will, where it will pick one of these other sections here. Let's see if this is even possible. May be very difficult to set up based on how we have it just firing off these sections here. Or it could be the easiest thing on the planet. So I am just really curious at this point if this will actually work. So let me delete these. And if I hold down Control and I move this into this section, and let me go ahead and remove them from here. So that way we have the option of, well, actually, I'll just remove them from here. I won't remove them, but I'll just hit 0 and just mute everything. So only this section will, and I'm curious, will we hear it in this section? Yes. Okay, so my idea, my crazy idea is this. We have this beat thing, and we have it basic. I'm gonna just copy and paste it through all these other sections. Now this isn't necessarily how I would want it, I mean, because if we needed to make any changes to this, we'd have to just recopy it every time. But since it's copying all the automations within the clips, you know, we're getting the same programs here. So let me kill all these, delete you guys. And yes. And since we're not going to have any of these in here, we don't need these stops. I do think we will want stops here. So we would want stops all across here if we want an option to only have, you know, no, just the beats and no tonal stuff. So what I need to do is I need to I need to add a layer, a row down here. Move these down. and just put stops all across here, just so that we'll kill, so that when we fire off this one, we don't get any of this. And I'm sure there's another way to do it so that we wouldn't have to duplicate all these. I'm just too brain dead right now to try and tackle that one. So we want to make sure our starts line up with this. Okay. You know, we'll call this beats. And tonals. Toenails. Okay, so what happens when we press the one key? Do we get the beats and the tonals at the same time? Yes. Eureka. Okay. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Now where's it? Okay, it's just playing that one over again. But we're getting a different sequence of these every time. Wow, at 666 BPMs, I feel like we're pushing it on that one. And this just doesn't have any of the tonal stuff. Cool. So I think if we I am so type A right now. This is this is not. It's just been bugging me. These colors. Oh my gosh. Yikes. All right. One last shot at it. We'll just make these blue for now. Okay, cool. So let's hit one again. I want to remove this. As much as I love this 666 beat, we'll make this 126. Oops, not what 6,000. Yeah, I wish it could go that high. I wish we could actually go down lower to like 5 BPM. Cool. Lots of variations now. And this 35 BPM, yeah. With all the different beats per minute, we are definitely getting a much different sound even coming out of our... So maybe we'll make this 234. This one will be 126. It's pretty overpowering. And that's the difficulty with this setup, is like trying to figure out why... You know, we didn't spend a lot of time, in my opinion, really taking care to figure out what, you know, what order of effects to put things in. I was just, you know, quickly for the sake of this. And it's nice because even if we hit the random thing and we get the same section again, we'll get a different, a whole different sequence of effects and things. Yeah, and this one's really quiet, I guess, because we just have some effect in there that's pushing down the volume or whatever. I like this. I like sometimes how things sound when it's really slow. Just unusual, especially with this abstract setup. So now I'm fascinated by all the different variations and things. Not all of them sound good, but you know, that's partly on me for having not spent enough time finessing the automations and making sure everything was going to play well together. Awesome. Well, okay. I think this makes up for the crash or whatever, the terrible video attempt before. But this is, one of those ideas that, would be fun to keep visiting and trying to make better, and, add a lot more of these beat programs to it. But until next time, hope you enjoyed, and happy sketching.